page. So get there now and tune in because you know what's about to happen. Sports Rap, here we come. Here we go. All right, folks. We are here. Hey, boss lady, what's going on? Glad you are tuned in as always each and every Monday. So, you know what it is. It is Monday, April the 27th, I believe. Let me check. Yeah, it's April 27th, and this is the first Monday after the NFL draft. So we will definitely get into that. But first, as always, each and every Monday, I want to welcome everyone to Sports Rap Radio Show on Heat 100 Radio. Robert Reeves, thanks for tuning in. So I know when I get into my first segment, which is going to be covering the NFL draft and what the Eagles did in the draft, we're definitely going to talk about that. I know I'm going to have some people chiming in, so bring it, folks. You know, we can talk about it. I am not the fly on the wall, so I can only give you what I know, what I researched, and I can give you my opinions on what went on and what I feel and what I think about what went on with the Eagles draft. So, to start off today's show, as always, we've got some news and some updates for you. So, the Tulane leading scorer, Tayshawn Hightower, has been arrested over the weekend for an alleged murder. Uh, didn't really give a lot of detail on that, but you know it went through that he was arrested. He has multiple charges, and the biggest one is a felony murder charge. Let me see. Boss lady Monica chimes in. She says, "Question: Why the draft with the uncertainty of COVID?" Well, they did the draft because they had to continue with their business schedule, which they were trying to stick to in order as it goes. So the draft had to be done. That's why it was a virtual draft. But they are seriously thinking that they will be able to get some NFL action going by June, around June, July, August, when the training camps begin and all that type of stuff. So they are hoping for the best. So that was the reason they went ahead on and did their draft. You know, sticking with their business schedule, sticking with their yearly schedule. The draft was where it is, and so they did it virtually and continued on with their business schedule. So, boss lady, I hope that helps you out some. The Chicago Bulls have hired a new GM. It is the former assistant GM for the Sixers, Mark Eversley. There had been some talk about him, you know, in several weeks about him being interviewed or the Bulls having interest in him, and it kind of quieted down a little bit. But here we go, announced today. Bulls will hire Mark Eversley, the former Sixers assistant GM, to be their new general manager. The New Orleans Saints will re-sign quarterback Taysom Hill. Jameis Winston is also finalizing a deal for finalizing a deal to join the New Orleans Saints as well. Randy Moss's son is going to sign with the Redskins, and a couple trades leading into the draft. And I'm doing this because my partners are not here, Frank and Baldy. So shout out to them. I hope they're staying safe. I hope they're tuned in. And I mentioned to Frank um, a while back, before the season ended or shortly after the season ended, maybe even during the playoff run, that they would have a tough time re-signing all of those people, all those players that they had that performed extremely well for them, because there were a lot of number one or a lot of first round or a lot of high draft picks, which have come to the end of their rookie contracts and are looking for raises. And it would not be feasible for them to pay all of them. So some of them were going to be lost. So they did pick up an offensive tackle from the Washington Redskins who was looking to be moved ever since last year. This one, Trent Williams, who was being traded to the 49ers. The 49ers also made other moves. Dana, all the way from the west side. What's going on? They also made two other moves. One move was with the Eagles, and I'll talk about that when I get further into the NFL talk. They traded uh, Marquise Goodwin, who they had been trying to trade for a long time, who they even mentioned to him, general manager there, John Lynch, even mentioned to him that they would try to find a place to trade him because he didn't actually, he kind of fell very low on their depth chart of receivers. So he was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, and one of their running backs, Mark Breida, was traded to the Dolphins. So there you have it. That's your news, your tips, and your updates for today. So I want to get into the NFL draft, and as you know, the NFL draft definitely was uh, this weekend. It began on Thursday, and it ran for 3 days. You know, the NFL draft is lengthy. It lasted 3 days. So round one, I'm going to go back and recap round one, and I have every pick here, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly so I can get into the Eagles stuff and break down my thoughts and what I think about the Eagles. And folks, again, you are Skip. Hey, what's going on? I know you got some Eagles stuff to talk, so you know when we get there, if you still watching, type it in and let me hear what you got. So as we went through the draft, we knew that Joe Burrow, the quarterback from LSU, was the ongoing favorite and the consensus number one pick. Went to Cincinnati, who desperately needed pretty much everything, but they also needed to do something to fix up their quarterback position. So they take the consensus number one, Joe Burrow, with the first pick in the draft. We move along, and it gets, I guess, a little weird, a little funky. And before the draft last Monday, I mentioned to you about the Miami Dolphins and how, with the number of picks that they had, especially in the first round, how they could kind of make the draft. As a lot of people were saying that they could make the draft with what they would do with their picks. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we progress on. At number two, the Washington Redskins take Chase Young, the defensive end out of Ohio State. And all these grades I'm going to give you are grades from what ESPN experts have about the NFL draft. So Joe Burrow was a pass at number one. For number two, Chase Young, the defensive end, was also a pass for the Washington Redskins. Number three overall, the Detroit Lions selected Jeff Okudah, cornerback out of Ohio State. Also a pass. I think they needed to replace one side of that defense with the loss of Darius Slay, who was now Philadelphia Eagle. So they needed to replace that. So that was a good pick for them in the first round. The New York Giants take Andrew Thomas, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. This is the first pick that we see as a fail. There is a need, at the time, there was a need for the Giants for offensive line, but a lot of people are scratching their heads as to why they took the fourth best offensive lineman as opposed to taking the first best or one of the top two offensive linemen when they were still available at that number four pick. Number five, first pick for the Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback from Alabama. They get a pass on that. Like we said, their uncertainty at quarterback was very rampant. They are definitely in a rebuild. So I think at that point they went with best player available, and I think they wanted to go with quarterback first at that position to handle that position first. So they got a pass for that. At number six, the Los Angeles Chargers take another quarterback, actually the third quarterback taken in the first round, Justin Herbert out of Oregon, who they also needed a quarterback with the departure of Phillip Rivers. Carolina, 7, take Derek Brown, defensive lineman out of Auburn. They get a pass for that. The Arizona Cardinals at number 8 take a linebacker, Isaiah Simmons out of Clemson. They also get a pass for that. At number 9, the Jacksonville Jaguars take C.J. Henderson, a cornerback out of Florida, something they needed to replace after making the trade for Jalen Ramsey, sending them to the Rams out in L.A. At number 10, the Cleveland Browns take Jedrick Willis, offensive tackle out of Alabama. This is a fail. I think I can agree with this being a fail for them at this number 10 pick. There are other needs that they could have got at this number 10 pick. So we'll see what happens with that pick, but they have been given a fail. The New York Jets, Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle out of Louisville, they got a pass. They did need help on their offensive line, so they took an offensive lineman, addressing a priority very early in the draft, if you will. The newly minted Las Vegas Raiders take Henry Ruggs, a wide receiver out of Alabama. This has been cut as a fail. It says that they took the least polished and most likely not a number one guy. They took speed with great run after the catch, but he's no Jerry Jeudy or CD Lamb. Okay. 13, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take an offensive tackle, Tristan Wirfs, where they needed help on that offensive line. At 14, the San Francisco 49ers take Javon Kinlaw, defensive lineman out of South Carolina, which is a fail. I kind of agree with them in giving them a 49ers a fail at that point, so Frank and Baldy don't get upset with me, but I'm sure Baldy will understand a little bit quicker, a little bit better than Frank will, with me saying what I'm saying. You guys had arguably the best defensive line in football last year. So it doesn't really make sense, excuse me. And all of these guys are young, all these guys are top draft picks. So to me, it doesn't really make sense to bring in another defensive lineman, a project rather, for that matter, because you got guys that are young. You don't really need to start thinking about that maybe till next year or the year. So I'm looking at maybe 2022, 2023. Then you want to start building that back up again because you got guys that are pretty much studs that can go for you right now. So not sure what made them take that pick. At 15, the Denver Broncos take Jerry Jeudy, one of the wide receivers, one of the top wide receivers from Alabama. They get a pass. 16, Atlanta Falcons take A.J. Terrell, a cornerback out of Clemson. Needed that position to refill. Another questionable pick, Dallas Cowboys take C.D. Lamb, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma, who this pick, you could talk about this pick in a lot of different ways. You could, as an Eagles fan or an Eagles supporter, you could say that the Cowboys did that to spite the Eagles, since they didn't move up to get him, and he was allegedly the apple of Howie's eye going into the draft. But the other questions become, where is he going to play? You still have the likes of Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper. So where do you put C.D. Lamb? You lost Jason Witten, so you might have went tight end, but you went wide receiver. They got a pass on it, so we'll see how that plays out for them and how much he produces on the field, how much he can get on the field and play. The Miami Dolphins, with their second pick, take Austin Jackson, offensive tackle out of USC. They get a fail for this. I'm not too sure why they got a fail for this pick. Like I said, the Miami Dolphins are in a rebuilding stage, so they had a need everywhere, all the way across the board. And a lot of times, folks, let me just say, Alexis, thanks for tuning in. Let me just back up or take a pause real quick and just add this in. A lot of time, folks, and Baldy, if you're tuned in, I'm sure if he was here, he would back me up with this. A lot of times, what we see as fans or commentators from the outside looking in on the surface of the team, the face value, we see that they might need A, B, and C. The team will also know that they need A, B, and C, but we're not in that room. We're not the flies on the wall. So we don't know exactly what the team is looking for. They may say, yeah, we need a wide receiver, but we can get a wide receiver later. And this is just an example, hypothetical. Maybe we can take this kid now that we need or that fits our system, and we can work him in. So maybe that's what the Dolphins were thinking when they did that. Maybe we can fit this guy in. Maybe he can play multiple positions on the offensive line. But nonetheless, they got to fail. The Las Vegas Raiders, again, they picked Damon Arnett, cornerback out of Ohio State, and that was a fail. The Jacksonville Jaguars take K'Lavon Chaisson, the edge out of LSU. At 21, a little bit of a surprise, the Philadelphia Eagles actually take Jalen Rager, the wide receiver out of TCU, and ironically, they get a pass for that pick, and we'll talk about that pick after we get through the rest of this first round. The Minnesota Vikings, right behind them, take Justin Jefferson, whom the a lot of critics speculated that he would go to the Eagles at 21. At 23, Los Angeles Chargers take Kenneth Murray, a linebacker out of Oklahoma. The New Orleans Saints take Cesar Ruiz, center out of Michigan. The 49ers again take Brandon Ayuk, a wide receiver out of Arizona State. The Green Bay Packers take Jordan Love, a lot of controversy there, the quarterback out of Utah State. Seattle Seahawks take Jordan Brooks, the linebacker out of Texas Tech. The Baltimore Ravens at 28 take Patrick Queen, a linebacker out of LSU. The Tennessee Titans take Isaiah Wilson, offensive tackle out of Georgia. Miami Dolphins take Noah Igbenogany, cornerback out of Auburn. The Minnesota Vikings with number 31, Jeff Gladney, cornerback from TCU. And closing out, Kansas City Chiefs take Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a running back from LSU. Now that we've been through all of those picks, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, we will definitely get into the Eagles portion of the draft. I will give you all of their picks for the entire draft, and we will talk more, a little bit in depth. Stay tuned, folks. SportsRap Radio Show. It's your boy D. Signing out right now. When I come back, we'll get into the Eagles talk before we get into our second half of the show. Peace.